So welcome everybody. This is the Bûche making class as promised, and about gallery view there. So I'm sure people will be joining us as we go along. If you didn't join us last night, we made the filling, and the first thing we're going to do is get that filling out of the fridge so it will come to room temperature and be ready by the time we're ready to put it on the cake. So, and I did post a video about this. So if you, this is what, I left mine in my food processor. So it's ready just to stick back on the bowl, and it'll sit there and come to room temperature and be easier to deal with when we're ready to deal with it. So the very first thing we're going to do is just get together all the things that we need to have. And I'll try to go through and hopefully point out everything that we have to have, equipment. And the cake doesn't actually have very many ingredients. So for the cake, we're going to need, I'm going to maximize my screen so I can see better if I'm actually showing you what's there. So we need 6 tablespoons of sugar. And I went ahead and was fancy and I measured them out because we used them separately, one at one time and one at another. And then you need 1/3 cup of good quality cocoa, unsweetened. If you use sweetened, it's going to end up being way, way too sweet. And then we're going to need 6 eggs right now. And cream of tartar. 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And that's all you need to start the cake. There'll be more stuff later. As far as equipment goes, you're going to need your mixer, and you're going to want to have 2 bowls if you can. Otherwise, you're going to have to switch because we're going to be beating the egg yolks, and then we're going to be whipping the egg whites separately and folding it in. This is a sponge cake. It's really light and airy. So ideally, you're going to have those 2 different bowls, or if you're using electric beaters, then you'll want to be able to rinse them off really quickly. But before we do anything else, we're going to prepare the pan. So for that, you need to have, I use spray and parchment paper, and then this is actually a cookie sheet, but it has a small rim on it. It's not as dirty as it looks. It's just well loved. So what you're going to do first is, and you want to do this very, very thoroughly, is really thoroughly spray that cookie pan. And make sure you get the whole thing, the corners. And make sure you get the sides too. I inhaled some of that. And the reason for doing this is that when we roll it out, you want it to come out really, really easily. So after you've sprayed your pan, then you're going to take a big sheet of parchment paper, and you want it to be big enough to where it'll hang over the edges about 1 inch. So what I like to do is I flatten it down into the pan, and it sticks very nicely now that you've sprayed it. Then I take my fingernail and I just run it along the edges of the pan on the inside, and that makes sure that it really adheres. And the smoother that you can get this, the smoother and easier your cake's going to come out. So that's why the more sticky stuff you use, the better. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of butter, and this has been sitting out all night, so it's which you can do with butter, by the way, and unless it's really, really hot. And I'm just going to butter the inside of this pan really thoroughly. Same way. So even though we already have parchment paper, and just, give up, you're going to either put on gloves or your hands are going to get buttery. This is a messy process. And you're probably going to want to use your fingers anyway to get it into all the corners. You don't want it to be thick on there. You don't want to leave any big lumps of butter because the batter will stick to it. But you do want to thoroughly butter that parchment paper. So like if you have globs like that, make sure you rub it in. Now once you've done that to your satisfaction, give your hands a little rinse. And then the next thing we're going to do is flour this pan. Now you can use flour to do it, but I like to use cocoa powder. And the reason why is because the cake is chocolate, the ganache is chocolate, and so it just cuts down on, you're going to see the flour on the cake when you roll it out. So I like to use the cocoa powder. So I just take and sprinkle a little bit, and basically then you're going to powder the pan with it just like you would flour. And you might need, because it's not the same consistency, it's a little heavier than flour, so you might need to get your hand in there and spread it out. But I start by just taking it over on top of the trash can and patting it down. It's a little harder to get it on the edges sometimes. So you might have to come back and put a little more. Okay, so then when you're done, it looks like that. It's all ready to go. It's ready for that cake batter to be poured in once you have it. So then you're going to preheat your oven to 350. Hopefully mine's going to start. I got to stay here and listen for it to start. And of course it picks this time not to want to start. So let me turn it off and try it again. It's old and it has this thing underneath that you have to, like, it gets build up on it and you have to take everything out and scrub this one thing, and then hopefully it starts. Come on. That's not a good sign. There we go. Catch. Ah! All right. I'm going to give it one more time, and then I'm going to call my husband down to fix it, and that will make him cranky. So what we might do is suspend this video for a few minutes while we fix the oven.
That's fine with me because I'm still waiting for my husband to get back with the pan that I need. It turns out my pan is too small, and then my other one's too big, so he's getting me one that's just right.
Ah, perfect.
a little high, but that'll be fine.
That'll be okay because as long as you have the parchment paper in it and it's connected to the sides, because what you're going to use the parchment paper to roll it out.
Yes.
So it does. If it's too high, that doesn't really matter. As long
Yeah.
as it's a very flat cake. So because it's a roll. So
Right.
yeah, I don't think that'll be
That
a
should be fine.
problem. Just
Yeah. Okay.
extra parchment on the end. What is very helpful is to have somebody else help you roll it out. So if you can do it by yourself, but it's easier if there's two people. So if your husband's around, you
Okay.
might want to grab him and make him help you with it.
If he wants to eat cake, he'll help.
There, finally it started. All right. Well, Cynthia, you can go ahead and start making the cake, even without.
Right. I figured I'll just catch the pan up when it gets here.
I just realized I got like some of that spray stuff all over my computer. That can't be good for it. All right. So I'm going to start with cake then. So we need 6 large eggs separated. And you're going to want to separate them into, whites in one and yolks in the other. Put the yolks in, let's see. Put the whites in whichever one you're going to, if you only have one mixing bowl, put the whites in the one you're going to start. Oh, Nicholas is joining us. Hello.
I mute because of my dogs.
It sounds like a doorbell. That's the thing that allows people in. Nicholas, are you in the subway? Oh no, you're
No,
outside somewhere.
I'm outside. Yeah, I'm walking. I actually am rehearsing for. I'm singing Christmas gigs, if you can believe it. We're in a loft. The windows and the doors are all open, and it's just me and the organist. But have to rehearse today, so I'm on my way to do that. But I wanted to pop in and say happy Bûching.
I'm glad to see you, and congratulations on having Christmas gigs.
Right? It's crazy.
So we were actually just about to start making the cake. I'm sorry you're not here because I know how you like to whip egg whites by hand.
Yes, and fold into chocolate. Is there anything better? I don't think so.
So we're just about to separate our eggs. So 6 large eggs, going to separate into egg whites into the bowl that you're going to use first. Nicholas, have you been cantering at this same church, or you have a bunch of different gigs?
I've been cantering at the same church. I started in September. It was August. And there have only been like 3 Sundays that I've been off.
Wow.
So it's been a really nice part-time job, actually. The numbers in New York, while they're, certainly up, we're still in comparatively good shape, especially in Manhattan. The Manhattan positivity rate is something like, New York as a whole is something like 5%, but Manhattan itself is something like 2.7. So
That's good.
that's something. Yeah. And it's good money.
Yeah.
I thought I was done with church jobs, but just kidding. It's basically I get paid to go work on my sight reading.
Well, 2020 has just been full of surprises.
Yep.
Who knew they'd ever be
And I'm
grateful
not
to have a church
naturally
job out of
for
college?
real. And I'm not naturally good at that thing either, because I could be a stronger reader, but my selling point is that the masses are in English, Latin, and Spanish, and I can just sing the text, and know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah. Oh no, I got a little yolk in there. Crap.
Oh no!
Oh no, just a tiny, tiny bit, but let's see if I can scoop it out. It may not set up. I got it out pretty clean. Oh, there's another little piece. All right, we're gonna see. I don't know if it'll do it or not, but we're gonna try. Luckily, I have plenty of eggs. I made my husband buy extra eggs, so that's it. Once the eggs are separated, the next step is then to beat the egg whites, and um, you're going to add the cream of tartar and you're going to beat until soft peaks form. So that's when the peaks fold over. They're not stiff and glossy. And then once that happens, you're going to continue to beat them and add the sugar a tablespoon at a time. So if you've measured out 6 tablespoons of sugar, have that ready to go. And again, you do not have to sit there and measure out tablespoon by tablespoon. Just shake a little sugar in there. So
Cindy, how much cream of tartar again?
it's a quarter teaspoon.
How much cream of tartar?
One quarter teaspoon.
Got you. Thank you. I'm going to go on mute because I'm going to be noisy.
Yes, and I will as well. Where are the kitties today, Terry?
Um, the Count Almaviva is asleep and his butt is hanging over the top perch on the cat tree. Dr. Bartolo has disappeared someplace behind the drapes, which he is trying to destroy.
So, just another regular day in Catland.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he hasn't broken anything yet, but you know, the day is still young.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go on mute while I mix these, just because nobody needs to hear that. So I'm really excited that it looks like my egg whites did go ahead and beat whip, even though I got a little yolk in them. That almost never happens. But they're not quite at soft peak, so I'm going to do it a little bit more, and then I'm going to start adding the sugar in. And by the way, when you start beating in the sugar, you're going to then beat the egg whites until they become stiff peaks, and they should be kind of glossy too because of the addition of the sugar. And I just like to stop and check. Almost there, not quite, almost. I love how they get so shiny and glossy. It's almost pearly. I'm gonna do them a little bit more. They're not quite there. They're almost there, but not quite. There we go. Nice and stick. So it's almost like a meringue, but not quite there. So that's the egg white beating portion. So now, because I only have one of these whiskey type things, I'm going to clean that off and use it again because its watch is not yet ended.
Mine are almost there, so give me a sec.
Okay, no worries. I got to clean this. Did you get your pan, Cindy? All right, so the next step is just set those whites aside, and you're gonna, once you're done with them, and you're gonna move over to the yolks. I have to say, buying a second blender bowl was one of the best kitchen moves that we made, because it's really annoying having to wash just one bowl over and over again. We don't do all that much baking, but when we do it up big. So, okay. So now we're going to beat in the egg yolks, these 6 egg yolks that you did, your 1/3 cup of cocoa powder. Oh, and by the way, this you're supposed to sift. I almost forgot because I never sift anything. I don't think it's a huge deal if you don't. Nobody's going to die. But, you know, if you can do it, it's nice to do it. So, nice little cloud of cocoa powder. I don't like to sift because I'm an impatient person. I just want it to magically be there. I want it to be like a cooking show where you have these assistants who just hand you everything. So then what I'm going to do is take the little pieces that didn't go through the sifter and just brush them by hand. So then it's nice and smooth. So you've got your 1/3 cup of sifted cocoa powder, and then you're also going to add the remaining 6 tablespoons of sugar that you had. And so now you're going to blend these for about 2 or 3 minutes. Basically what you want is for it to get thick. So 2 minutes might do it, 3 minutes. It just depends on what you're using and how strong it is and, you know, magic and all of that stuff. So here we go. I'm going to put it on mute and I'm going to blend for 2 minutes. I'm also stopping every once in a while just to scrape down the sides because that's how my blender works. It doesn't get what's at the very bottom or the sides all the time. So I like to go in with one of these little spatulas and really try to make sure I've got all the stuff on the bottom. I also covered it with a towel when I started because there was quite a cloud of cocoa powder coming up. Okay, so that was 2 minutes. I think it needs to be a little thicker than that, but you'll notice that it gets a lot lighter in color as it beats. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it a little bit more. One more little scrape down. One more little blend, and then we're ready to move on to the next little step. So I'm going to let my blender, let my thing drip a little bit. Knock the sides to get all that goodness off. If you like to lick the beater, this is the time to do it. Nice and chocolatey and not too sweet. Now you're done with this, so you can. Its watch is ended. You can put it away for a while. So now comes the fun part, the part that requires some patience, and that is that we're going to fold little bit by little bit.
Okay, we have to cue our Schitt's Creek excerpt here about folding.
Uh-oh. Oh, yes.
Are you going to be David? I feel like we need a meme battle.
That's hilarious. I watch this TikTok of this guy that does these impressions of all of them, but he mostly does Moira, and it's hilarious. So basically, you're going to want a bigger spatula for this. You don't want one of the little ones. And just get you a nice, that's probably about half a cup on there. What you don't want to do, because the idea here is we're trying to get as much air into the batter as possible. And forgive me if I'm telling you something you already know, but there may be people watching this later who don't know this. So, and then we're going to put it in here. And we're just going to do gentle lifting and turning motion. So lift and turn and lift and turn. And what we want to do is slowly combine those things. So we're putting air into the batter, and it's going to fluff up a lot.
Okay.
And so you don't want to beat it. You don't want to smoosh it down at all. You just want to keep folding. And so for the Moiras out there and the Davids, this is what folding is. David, I don't know, just fold. I can't do it. Can't do the accent. And you don't have to worry if you don't get it all, like all the white out at first, because you're going to do this quite a bit more. Eventually, you're going to want it to be all very smooth. So then when you have the first bit folded in to your satisfaction, you can just go get another scoop, and in it goes. And you repeat. And we just continue until it is all of the batter is folded in. You're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have some lumps of egg white in there. Resist the urge to squish them. Just keep turning. Just keep folding. You do want to get them all, and you might like, if you have a small, I don't know if you can see, so there's a lump right there. Right there is a big lump. So what I'm going to do with that is put it back in here, and I'm going to do a smaller fold just right over that, just to get rid of it. So if you're having problems with big lumps, then you can do that to get rid of them. Added benefit, the cake itself is gluten-free because it has no flour in it. However, remember that the filling that we made does have a little bit of flour, so not very much, but it has a little bit. But as I said, you can fill it with anything. You don't have to use that. So you don't have to use the filling that's in my recipe. You could use any kind of filling you liked. So you could choose something that was gluten-free. And then all the rest of the recipe is gluten-free. So you should be getting this really beautiful, glossy, I'm sorry the light from my window is in the way, so you can't really see the color, but it's this really nice light brown and kind of glossy from all the egg whites. Told you, this is the part that requires some patience. It just takes a while to do and you can't really rush it. But we're almost there. We're almost to the end of the cake prep part. So in a minute, we'll be popping it in the oven. It only bakes for 15 minutes, which gives us time to prep for the next stage.
Okay, I think my folding's done, so I'm going to work on my pan, catch up with you there.
Hey, you're a faster folder than I am. Yeah, these jelly roll type cakes are really actually super easy to make. And you can fill them, you can make all different flavors, you can fill them with anything. And they're actually, once they're rolled up, they're pretty sturdy. So the cake itself is a little delicate until you roll it. These little bitty spatulas came with my Vitamix, and I hardly ever use them for that, but they are the best for everything else. They're so much better than the big ones, except for the folding business. They're too small for that, but for everything else, they're great. And my husband even uses them to cook eggs. Okay. This is my last fold. So that's my result. I think it's finally all done. And now we're going to spread it into our prepared cake pan. How's yours coming along, Cindy?
I am just getting to the cocoa, so I'm close.
So the next thing we do is then we're just going to spread this in the pan. And what I suggest you do is just pour it, try to sort of pour it throughout the pan. It's going to be thin once you roll it out. So just reconcile yourself to that. There are more batter licking opportunities at this moment. If you have anyone lurking around who's been helping you, running errands for you, you might reward them. Or not, since you're doing all the work. Okay. And then you just want to smooth it out gently. Again, you don't want to press on this because you don't want to squeeze out the bubbles. So you're just going to spread gently and try to really get it into all the corners. And here's the other thing. You don't want to lift as you spread because the cocoa sticks to the bottom and it'll pull up. So you kind of want to just do it in one direction at a time. Don't go back and forth. And you want to get it as even as possible. So once I've got it all spread out to all four corners, then I start trying to make sure that there's not an area that's thin or it's not piled up on the corners or anything like that. There we go. So that's the cake in the pan. It's not going to be perfectly smooth on the top. That's okay. And so then what you're going to do is stick it in the oven, and you're going to bake it for 15 minutes. And the way you know it's done is that the middle will spring back when you gently touch it. You don't want to stick a knife in it or anything. You're just going to touch it and it'll be springy. So in the oven it goes. And in the meantime, I've set out a baking rack for it to cool on when it comes out. Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes.
15 minutes, starting now.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that?
Nothing, Alexa.
Canceling.
Alexa, you didn't cancel the timer.
15-minute timer canceled.
Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes.
15 minutes, starting now.
I wish I could change your name to Rosie, like Rosie from the Jetsons.
Sorry, I can only help change the wafer to one of these.
Alexa, stop. She's chatty this morning. Okay, so how does it taste, Cindy?
Good.
Really,
It's
really
good.
light.
I'm afraid mine's runnier than yours, and maybe I folded too energetically, or maybe I
Let's look.
under
Let's
peaked.
see it.
Oh, it's in the oven.
Oh,
I'll show you. It's got bubbles. Can you see it?
yeah, it does look a little. It doesn't look really fluffy. So we'll see how
It's
it
not
turns
super
out.
fluffy.
Okay.
What?
Well, we'll see what happens.
We shall see what happens. It did seem very. It has bubbles in it. It's spongy-ish, but it's a little wetter than yours.
Yeah. So mine. I don't know if you can really see from what's left, but it's pretty. You know, that's the consistency. It's like, and this is probably more beaten than what I put in the pan because this is what's left over. But it should be really light
Yeah,
and
mine has that.
meringue.
Well, mine's a darker chocolate, so mine's going to be a darker color just because I used a really dark chocolate.
Oh, okay. What kind did you use?
I used.
Ooh, King Arthur flour, schmancy. Okay, great. I used Ghirardelli. My favorite was Scharfenberger, but of course they don't do Scharfenberger. They don't make it anymore. So, all
Right.
right. So while we're waiting for the cake to bake, we're going to start getting set up for the ganache. And the ganache has to cool for a while before you can spread it too. So, what you're going to need for the ganache, is 3/4 cup of whipping cream, 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 5 ounces of bittersweet or semi-sweet chocolate. I prefer the bittersweet because I find the semi-sweet too sweet, and 4 ounces of milk chocolate. And you want the chocolate to be, if you have a bar form, you're going to want to chop it up because we're going to be melting it. So you don't want it to be too really big of chunks.
Are we putting these in a saucepan or?
Yeah, you're gonna want a heavy saucepan, similar to what you used to do the filling.
Mm-hmm. But we're not double boiling, right?
So 3/4 cup whipping cream or heavy cream. 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and you can just dump the butter in there with the cream if you like, or you're going to put it all in the saucepan in a second anyway. Now, the ganache is a little tricky, and it may not set up the first time. This has often happened to me. That's why I always get extra chocolate and cream and stuff in case I have to make it again. If your ganache doesn't set up properly, it is not completely lost. What will happen is the butter will rise to the surface. It just won't combine with the cream. Never mind, you can still eat it. It's still delicious. You just pour off the oil that forms on the top, the butter, and use the rest of it for an ice cream topping. And it is the most decadent, delicious ice cream topping you've ever had. So, not losing here either way.
Tell me the amounts of chocolate again.
So for the chocolate, you're going to want 5 ounces of the bittersweet or semi-sweet, and I like to do that.
Yeah, I'm
What
weighing
you're going to
mine
be
too.
doing, you're going to want, if you have little baking chocolate chips, that's fine. You probably don't need to chop them any further. I have these sort of palettes that I got. I think they're thin enough. I'm probably not going to have to chop them any further either.
Okay, 5 of one and 3 of the other.
5 of one and 4 of the other.
Oh, 4 of the other. Okay. So I have
4
a
of the
terrible
milk
memory.
chocolate. And if you don't have enough of one or the other, it's not going to kill anything. If you have a little more milk chocolate or a little more bittersweet, it's going to be fine. It's not going to, I don't think it's going to mess with the formula at all. Just change the taste of the ganache a little bit. All right, so we're going to move over to the stove now. Keep in mind that we have a little time. We have to take out the cake in a minute, so be prepared to do that. In fact, we might want to wait to start on the ganache until we do that. We don't get distracted. You get that cake out and let it cool. Alexa, how much time is left on the timer?
You have 7 minutes and 40 seconds left on your 15-minute timer.
And there's plenty of time. I'm going to go ahead and start with ganache because you don't have to stir it every second. So what we're going to do is pour the butter and the cream into your saucepan. And then you're going to bring it to a boil over medium-high heat, stirring until the butter is melted. And maybe giving it a couple of stirs in there otherwise, just to make sure it's all good. So I would use a whisk to stir, preferably. I'm going to put on medium-high heat. So again, here we just have to be patient. And just stir and melt that butter. Have the chocolate standing by. Have your hot pad standing by so you can snatch the cake out of the oven when it's ready in a minute here. Once the butter is all melted, you can stop stirring and just, watch it and give it a little stir every once in a while. Because what will happen with the cream is that it'll form a skin on the bottom. So you kind of want to stop that from happening if you can. So my butter was room temperature. It's already melted. I'm going to give it a little pausa. So what happens next is once the butter is melted, you can stop stirring for a second. We're going to keep an eye on it, stir it on and off until it comes to a boil over medium heat. And then as soon as it comes to a boil, we're going to turn off the heat and remove it from the heat. So that's what you just want to think about moving ahead. And then while you're preparing also, then you're going to want to get yourself a medium bowl to transfer the ganache into after it's done so it can cool. Don't leave it in the pan. It'll make a big mess. Mm. I was cooking all day yesterday. I made hazelnut gelato, which came out really well. That's to go with this cake because, you know, in true steel magnolia tradition, you need something to cut the sweetness. So I made hazelnut gelato. I made 2 kinds of cookies. I made prime rib. What else did I make? The filling for the ganache. It was a day filled with cooking. And I still had a couple. Oh, and I made the cranberry sauce. And I still have a couple of things that I didn't get done yesterday. But pacing myself. I actually really enjoy doing a lot of cooking when I don't have anything else to do.
I just peeked at my cake and it's pulling away from the sides. Is that a good sign?
Yeah. Yeah, so you could touch the middle of it and see if it bounces back.
No, it's staying a little dented. I'll wait.
Yeah.
Oh,
So just
I gotta boil. Okay.
mine's getting simmering. So yeah, then as soon as you take it off, Cindy, then you're going to dump in your chocolate and start stirring.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. Mine just started to boil too. Boil. Yeah. I would say make sure you let it get to a full boil.
Oh, it was a full boil. Mine was definitely foaming.
Okay. Well, then as soon as you do that, then you're gonna as soon as you take it off the heat, pour in that chocolate, and just start whisking it like the Spinetta with her chocolate for the ladies, and it will get beautiful and glossy. Sorry, you can't really see because the sun, the position of the window, but.
Okay, mine's melted. Should I move it into this bowl?
Yeah, once it's all melted, then you can just pour it into that bowl. And then we're kind of just at the wait and see stage again, because we're just going to wait and see if this sets up properly. I think mine did, knock on wood.
How do you know?
You'll know because it will not separate. Once it cools down, it'll be a little thicker.
Right.
Okay, and there's my cake warning, my cake alarm.
Okay. So the ganache now is going to have to sit and cool. It will thicken as it cools. Generally takes about an hour. Unlike the filling, I would not try to speed it up. Alexa, stop. I wouldn't try to speed it up like we did with the ice bath with the filling. I would just let it come to room temperature. So that's one of the reasons we put it in the bowl and we take it away from the heat and all of that. So I'm going to test my cake now. So that's what mine looks like. I think
Yeah,
mine
mine's
too,
much
as you can see, it
darker.
doesn't really spring back, so I'm going to stick it in for another minute. Just kind of keep an eye on it.
Mine's halfway springing back. Should I put it in a little bit longer?
Put it in a little bit longer.
It looks really good. It foamed up, so I guess I didn't do it wrong.
No, I guess not.
The ganache tastes good.
Yeah, I mean, it's chocolate and cream. What more could you want?
Good for me.
So while we're waiting for the cake to finish, let's just talk about the what happens moving forward. Because I'm not sure we're all going to want to sit around and wait for the whole thing to come together. I might come back on later and do a little video of assembling it. But so what? Because we have to wait an hour. We're going to have to. Hi, Mitra. She's not on yet. Hello.
Mine's springing. I'm going to pull it out.
All right. I'm going to go check mine too. Hi, Mitra. We can't hear you, but thank you for joining us. All right. Still not springing back. I'm popping it back in. Another minute. Alexa, set a timer for 1
I
minute.
think everything in my house is moving faster than in your house today.
Well, as you know, with baking, there's a lot of different things that can influence um, the outcome, and it could be, the size. Maybe your pan, because your pan is thicker or bigger. Maybe your oven heats differently than mine. So there's a lot of things that can happen. So while we're at the phase of where we have made the filling, we've made the ganache, and we've made the cake. We're waiting. Cindy's cake is out. I'm waiting for mine to come out. So the next steps are going to be to let the cake completely cool. You cannot get impatient with it or it's not going to come together properly. So we want the cake to completely cool. We want the ganache to completely cool. And it's going to take about an hour for the ganache.
I'm having trouble understanding right now.
Alexa, stop.
Please try a little later.
Alexa's very confused. Alexa, stop. Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't find the device named Kitchen.
She's very chatty today.
Well, this cake looks amazing. It's so light. There's no flour in it.
Well, so mine is still not really pulling back, but I think it's done. Another way to look, you're talking before about the corners coming out. So one of the things I like to do when I get it out while it's still warm is to pull gently on the parchment paper. And it should separate really easily, and it just did.
So are we taking the parchment out of the pan or no?
No, not yet, not yet. You're
Okay.
gonna use that parchment to help you roll.
Right. Okay.
So what you do is I would just put your cake on a rack, a cooling rack.
Yeah. So this is mine, Cindy, and of course it's a taller pan, but the sides, I don't know if you can see,
Let me
it pulled off the sides pretty nicely.
switch views.
So it pulled off the sides pretty nicely. My pan's still pretty tall though, so
Yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good.
yeah, and it's definitely springy in the middle.
So I would say because your pan is deeper, if then what I would do is when you're ready to roll it, I would maybe lift the whole thing out of the pan.
That's what I was saying. Put it on like a tray or
Yeah,
cutting
so
board.
so that's what let's talk about, like how we prep for the next part. What we're going to do is get whatever platter you want to display the cake on, and that's what you're going to be putting it on when you roll it. So what I do normally is I just have this big round pizza pan. I cover it in foil, and that's what we use. And what you're going to do is just, that's whatever you're going to put it on, that's what you want to prep. When we go to, the first thing we're going to do before we do anything else is, except for you, Cindy, because your pan is deeper, you're going to lift it out and just put it onto a flat surface. Okay? Don't put it on the pan you're going to cook it, display it on yet. Just put it on a flat surface. Then we're going to take the filling. We're going to spread the filling on it. And then we will gently roll. And that's when you have to have that platter ready to go. So when we roll it, what we're going to do, just describe, is we're going to lift the paper from one end. This is where it's really helpful to have another set of hands, because you're going to lift the parchment paper on one end, and then it's real helpful to have somebody who will very gently start to roll the cake for you. Now, it's going to crack. It's not just going to roll up nicely, or at least none of mine ever have. But that's not such a big deal. It's going to be covered with the ganache. You won't see it. You might even see the filling through the cracks. It's not a big deal. But what you want to do, if you're the person who is holding the parchment, then you want to sort of help with your fingers underneath, hold it, and then just sort of help gently push the cake away from the parchment as the other person is very gently rolling it. And when I say gently, it's like super, super gentle, because the cake is a little delicate. So just, kind of tiny, tiny bits, centimeters at a time, and it'll start going. And I usually get like maybe 3-4 rolls out of that size of a cake. So that's just it. And if it breaks, again, just don't worry about it. Just keep rolling. And then you're going to end up with that log with the filling inside. Then what you do is you're going to take a sharp knife and you're going to cut it, because generally you make 2 logs, and then you can arrange it however you want. We usually do this sort of gun shape, something like that. But you could take, if you want to be fancy, it's actually pretty sturdy once it's rolled up. So you could take a spatula or just your hands, and you could set the log, a shorter log on top of the, lay it like that, however you want to arrange it. You're going to clean up your platter, and then it's ready. Hopefully by that time the ganache is set up and it's ready to glaze. So then what I do is pour the ganache on it, spread it with an offset spatula. Because and this works for the filling too, just like we did when we were spreading the cake batter into the pan, you want to go in one direction with it, and you want to do a little lifting motion, because otherwise you run the risk, especially with the filling, which is thick, you run the risk of pulling up the cake and tearing a hole in it. So, you just want to kind of do it really, really delicately. And it's probably not going to reach all the way to the edges, and that's okay, because it's going to have so much ganache on it. This recipe makes a huge amount of ganache for the cake. There's always too much. You're going to end up places on the cake that have, this much ganache on it. And I haven't ever heard anybody complain about that yet, because it's basically, you can eat that with a spoon.
It's almost a pint of ganache. I'm looking at mine.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
a
it
lot.
in a
It's a lot.
Pyrex bowl. It's a lot. So,
but you can save whatever you don't use. You could save and use as ice cream topping, or dip cookies in it, or whatever.
Amazing.
Or just eat it with a spoon.
And I'm supposed to run that filling through again, another couple turns.
When we get ready to, yeah, when we get ready to ice to spread the filling, that's what we're gonna.
Mhm.
Um, then the other thing that you can do, and if you're watching this later and you have a bunch of little kids running around looking for something to do, then you could prep the marzipan, because the marzipan here is basically sugary Play-Doh, sugary sticky Play-Doh. It's a mess, so prepare accordingly. But what I do is I get a little cup, little bowl. I put in a little piece of marzipan, maybe about that big, depending on what color I know people are going to want most of, and then squeeze some food coloring in it. And I mix it with my fingers. I use the kind of food coloring that comes off, that's water soluble. That's the best way I've found to mix it up. And just until you have a little ball of colored marzipan, be sure if it's sitting out that you cover it with plastic wrap because it dries out really quickly.
Okay.
And then people can sit there and make whatever little figures they want to go on the cake. Mushrooms are traditional, but usually, just any kind of holiday decoration you want. My family gets really creative. We usually have, the year. We have, various salutations. We have had frogs, snakes, worms, all kinds of critters, whatever people felt inspired to make. And generally, our logs are pretty encrusted. I'll probably do something a little more modest, a little more adult and festive this year. I like to do a little poinsettia. But it's just, it's up to your imagination. It's a lot of fun to do that part. I really recommend doing it as a family activity if you have family around, because it's just super fun. And it's something that in my family, I started making this cake, gosh, 25, 30 years ago. No, not 30, but, probably somewhere between 20 and 25. And my adult nephews and nieces still love to participate in this. So the one thing that gets everybody in away from the football game at our house is making the marzipan figures for the Bûche Noël. So it's really kind of fun. And the adults like to do it too. So, okay, so I'm going to check on cake, see how it's doing. Oops, it's still okay. I did something I shouldn't have done. I just touched it, and so the top came off. But you know what? Couldn't eat it. The top crust, you can see the little hole I made there. It's very delicate. So that's why you want to be careful when you start to spread. It will come up, and the pan's still pretty warm.
I suppose I could turn off my oven.
I'm going to go ahead to help to promote the cooling, because it's picking up so easily with the parchment. I'm going to pick mine up and move the pan, so it's just cooling on its own. Let's see, where am I going to put it though?
This pan hardly got any damage because it's just oily. Use the bowl again.
So I've been checking on my ganache here, and it's still warm, but I think it's going to set up nicely. If it was not going to, you would see, you can see it's shiny, but the oil isn't rising to the surface. That's the sign that it hasn't set up. Also, sometimes I found that it just doesn't get thick enough on its own. And if that happens to you, now again, if the oil rises to the surface, you can't use it. But if it doesn't, you don't have to remake it. Then you can always stick it into the fridge for a little bit to help it thicken up a bit.
Mine looks good. Tell me what you think.
Looks nice.
It looks like
Starting to get, yeah. Is it getting a little thicker?
It's thicker, but it's still pourable.
Yeah.
I have a
It's
little
gonna,
crust on top.
that's okay. It's gonna stay pourable. It's gonna, it'll just continue to thicken as it cools.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Like
So the other thing I
chocolate
like
paint.
to do when I put the ganache on is it is going to be very liquidy, actually. And you'll find that it kind of runs down the sides. I will take a spoon. It's hardest to get it onto the log ends. So I'll take a spoon and just drip it down and, sort of keep pushing it on there until enough of it sticks. I usually take a wet paper towel and go around the bottom and clean up because there will be a lot of ganache that just kind of spills down on the bottom. And then
You don't want to see the jelly roll at the back?
You
You want to
can.
cover that?
What I do, I cover mine completely, and I take a fork and I draw wood grain into the ganache with the fork. And for the ends, I do a circle with it. And I also do like if you don't go straight, you can make sort of like little whorls and stuff, however realistic you want to get it. Then you can take your sifter and sift a little powdered sugar over it to make it look like snow if you like to do that. And then decorate it with the marzipan. So, since it's going to take a while for stuff to cool, I'm going to suggest we go ahead and adjourn for now. But let me just go over one more time about the filling. When you put the filling on, you're going to pulse it in the food processor a few more times to make it more spreadable. Use an offset spatula. Take a little bit at a time. And put it just in a corner. Don't try to spread it over the whole thing because it's going to be too thick and it's going to lift up the top of the jelly roll. So you're just going to take a little bit and spread in a very thin layer and try to get most of the middle of it. It will not go all the way to the edges. And then you do the roll. And then when the ganache, when you feel like it is cool, it's completely cool, it's thickened up, then you can go ahead and ice it. I do suggest putting it in the oven, putting it in the fridge, keeping it in the fridge, just because, especially if you're in Texas and it's hot. If you're in a colder area, you might be able to get away with leaving it out on your counter. So, any questions about any of that?
No, but I might hit you up with one later.
Yeah, I will probably come on and do like Facebook Live when I start to do the decorating part, putting it together. I'll just do little Facebook Lives to show doing that, but they'll be accessible for people to watch later on. So that's
I'm
it.
excited. Thank you.
Yay! I can't wait to see how yours turns out.
You too.
Thanks for joining me. See you guys later.
Bye.